Give me a second as I open the file. Okay, this is better. Full screen in a minute. Oh, good. Oh, thank you, Chumu, and hello, everyone. My name is Aaron. 안녕하세요. My Korean is at a basic level. I was in Korea in December. I caught up with Prof. Koo and many others. We had a conference in Seoul as well, and hopefully we'll be able to see some of you in person in the near future. Hope you can hear me well.
Yes,
Um,
good.
before before I begin, also you see my backgrounds celebrating tomorrow as the International Women's Day, and I want to acknowledge as well in the world of tourism, hospitality events, that there are a lot of women who contribute front stage, backstage, middle stage to the experiences that you and I participate in, and certainly the amount of effort that they go through to build successful career lives, professional lives, families, and their own personal interests. So, well done to everyone, and I hope this will be also an inspiration for many of you pursuing your studies at Kyung Hee and also going on to further pursuits in life. I have just a couple of slides that I wanted to make a bit of an introduction into tourism and hospitality careers, what that might look like in the current and maybe even the future environment. Give you an opportunity to have a dialogue, ask questions with me. What's it like? I was born and raised in Singapore. My wife is Taiwanese, so the children are very confused. We live in Australia, and it's a very diverse landscape right now. We've come out, obviously, for many of us, of this thing called the pandemic, and certainly now people are asking the question, right? What's the next step? What does the 2030 future of careers looks like? And many of you in Korea and elsewhere are already starting to see things like robots, drones, AR, VR, AI being discussed, but the implications of the work environment is not necessarily thought through, and very few companies have a policy for AI in the workplace as yet. But it's starting, and I want to encourage many of you to think of it and say maybe that's an area of my interest to pursue as well. So allow me to share my screen and go through this probably less than even 20 slides. My screen is frozen. I'm back
Good.
on. Can you see it now? Cool. It's full
Yes,
screen.
good.
I'll
Perfect.
I'll share, and Prof. Koo has got the set of slides there as well. So more than happy for this to go out to you as we go through this. It's my name, my email address. I come from a beautiful part of Australia called Queensland. We have several campuses on the Sunshine Coast and in Brisbane, and also on a beautiful island called Gari, formerly known as Fraser Island. There are dingoes. Dingoes are wild animals, a bit like a cross between a dog and a wolf, and they are highly predatory carnivorous types of animals. There's been obviously areas around animal ecology. So talking about careers and studies, some of my students do a degree in business, obviously in tourism as a major, but the second major is animal ecology, studying about animals, wildlife, knowing about dingo habitats, how they have children, how they interact with people in the tourism environment, and others look at things like whale watching, koalas, and so on. So it's a quite a diverse set of students that I've got, and I'm happy to talk more about that later on. A bit about myself. I look after all the students at the University of the Sunshine Coast. I also am one of the research center leads in the area of capability development in a newly formed research center called the Indigenous and Transcultural Research. So what that looks at is, how we build capability, research methods comprising indigenous, traditional histories, cultures, food, heritage, and also learning about different cultures. And I am always amazed and inspired by people like Prof. Koo and many others who do very advanced and sophisticated research, which probably in Australia we don't necessarily have that as an infrastructure, but also in terms of some of the learning from a cross-cultural perspective. I'm a managing editor in a journal. It's a Taylor and Francis journal, and we probably, I think I can say that, will be SSCI this year, so that increases our workload. Last year, I handled more than 750 papers, and it's a growing job. And Prof. Gu and many others will know this. It's something that continues to give back to the research academy. I am this year the Emerald Publishing's first ambassador for Australasia. So that means I get to also carry the Emerald Publishing brand with me, books, case studies, research, any other resources across different parts of the Asia Pacific. And it's always nice to know what people are doing elsewhere in the world and in the continent. I got elected to be the chapter president of TTRA, the Asia Pacific chapter this year and probably next year as well to kind of guide and inform how we do research between academic and industry work across the rest of the world. Last year we were in Korea for a conference. This year in December we'll be in Thailand. So for some of you with your student work, if you want to present, it's a smaller conference. It's not the big ones. It's generally 100 people at most, and it's a safe space for many of you to talk about research in a very elaborated and probably a more nuanced type of landscape. Other things I do in terms of the meetings and convention sector, I am an ambassador for ICA, looking after event legacies, impacts, sharing some of the ways forward for those of you interested in business events. And also the fun one for me is being on board the Olympic task force for the 2032 Olympics and Paralympics, looking at legacies and sustainability. That's a kind of a government task force. There's about 41 task force. So I've had the privilege and honor to help also write white papers, what it looks like. Some of you may not know, but after this year's Paris Olympics, the Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028, the one after that will be in Brisbane in 2032. So it's
Aaron,
an interesting time. Yes,
so you're the member of task force team for 2032 Olympic, Summer Olympic
that's
and
right.
Paralympic.
So yeah,
Okay.
so very different role to
Uh,
obviously wearing your academic hat, but
Okay.
fun because you see different people from places you never get to see.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Look forward to your work and
Thank
your
you.
achievement.
Yeah, and I wanted to say I'm not traditional academic because if you look at some of the jobs I've had in and around academia, I started like many of you, an undergraduate degree in business, marketing, and tourism were like my areas of study. But I've actually taken on board some of these other roles before I went back to do like the PhD and the
Mm.
masters before that.
Uh-huh.
Some of them were interesting. The first one I did an internship.
Mm.
They just sent me to do an internship with an insurance company. It's not very tourism, isn't it? For some of you, you may be laughing like it's on numbers, and it's
Mm.
like calculating how much you and I pay for insurance, and it's not the most fun job as well. But I mean, some people enjoy it because they get paid a lot, charging people travel insurance premiums and COVID insurance premiums, for example. I was involved with like a Japanese tour operator when I was in Singapore doing inbound and outbound tours. So inbound means you bring people into the country, and a lot of the clients were Japanese businesses with incentive trips. They come into Singapore or Malaysia or Indonesia. We develop itineraries to allow them to play golf. There's always karaoke involved. I think it's a popular thing. And outbound as well. Some of the regional Southeast Asian businesses would send some of their delegates through us to Japan, and we would be able to guide them depending on whether it's Tokyo, Osaka, or anywhere else in Japan. So it was quite fun, and I was probably the most fluent in my Japanese back then, and I probably have lost half my vocabulary, not speaking it very much now. My first job, and I tell this to my students, they get a bit amazed. I started out as event photography as an assistant, not the photographer. I'll probably fail at it, but I started out to help event photography in a event expo for parents and children. So my job was to try and get the baby to sit still for 4 seconds so that the photographer could take the picture. It was fun, but it was hard work because many of you and I know, like babies, like pets, they don't sit still, and it's a learning experience, putting together logistics. service quality, and so on. We do a lot of educational fairs. I used to work with an agency that some of you might know in Korea called IDP Education. They do a lot of um, university type of programs to Australia, and now they represent institutions in the UK and US as well. I volunteered at the Youth Olympics in 2009 when I was in Singapore. 28, 29, 2010, I also helped out with the Formula One. It was great. It almost made me lose my hearing. I was with my students.
Wow, it's amazing and fantastic. You have been through the many practical experiences so far, and then you become a professor in academia again. What's
And
wrong
I
with
think
that?
I think it's an interesting question, I think, Chumo, because the jobs that I had kind of informed the experiences and the curriculum that I can develop and share. And it's about stories, right? We all know the theories and concepts in the books and the readings, but when you have stories that are real and sometimes they're quite challenging,
Uh,
you have a lot to share with the students. And through this background, I think it also helped me in some of my external service roles to work with industry and write papers with them and do research with them because it's fun, right? The integrated resort opening team, which is like a casino resort, the two resorts in Singapore, Marina Bay Sands and Resorts, were myself and a few others and the students were involved, and I learned a lot, what it means to put together the whole like catering side of things, event side of things, retail, and that helped me as I speak now, because in Brisbane, we are building our first major integrated resort downtown. It's
mm,
still very much a construction site, but it allowed me to work with the businesses, write with them on papers and so on, and learn, a bit about what kind of markets they deal with. So I think the careers, as you can see, they're quite diverse.
mm,
There's sport, there's events, education, tour operations, insurance. Some of you may find that, yeah, that's my passion, that's my interest, and go on and do something like that. And of course, doing a lot of the MICE and business events organization, which I've been involved with this year alone, just involving myself in almost 3 or 4 conferences. And that gives me a bit of a good lens on, how to build curriculum as well, what's needed for
mm,
people like you students going
mm,
into the industry.
mm,
Yeah. Um, just a very short, obviously, overview of the set of slides. I wanted to showcase a bit about why it's important, some stats from Korea, which might be of interest to some of you. The very different types of careers. When I grew up and going through university, it was usually like a tour operator or it's like an airline like Korean Airlines, and those very defined careers. Now the career options are so diverse. Some of my students, and I'll talk about entrepreneurship and innovation. It's you becoming your own boss, you become your own manager,
mm,
and the career progression's quite different. I want to encourage many of you to chart your own path. Of course, there will be questions and things around how businesses and the industry of today need to come to the table and discuss
mm,
the needs of the past and the current needs of millennials or generation alpha or beta. They're quite different. And I think we want to be able to have some serious questions and dialogues with the industry as well. I'll start by looking at obviously why it's important and my, I guess, passion for all of you here on the screens and those of you listening to the recording is that it's a fun industry, it's a big industry, and it's about people moving across to different places. Just the first half, if you like, of last year alone, there were 700 million tourists around the world. That's huge. That's in a pandemic year, and when the borders started to reopen, including Korea, for example, it's showing that people love tourism. People want to spend and go to places. I acknowledge the costs are higher in terms of going anywhere, domestic or international. But the fact is that people can't replace this with technology. They still want to physically go to Europe, Korea, Africa, North America, Australia, New Zealand. And there are jobs. The jobs are coming back. They are not completely filled. There is still, for example, in where we are in Queensland, more than 1,000 head chef jobs still available, and they can't find them. And the struggles are that other industries are competing for this kind of skilled labor. Through the pandemic, some people went elsewhere, and now the industry, whether it be a hotel service center, airline, restaurant, they are still trying to say, well, what does the workforce need and how can we support that? Just last year alone, the number of foreign tourists to South Korea was more than 11 million already. So you can see that this year we are on track to actually enhance some of those numbers as well.
Aaron, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
Back to the previous slide. You said
yeah,
you stressed the number of 11 million, so huge numbers comparing to our size of countries. But
correct.
as you know, Korea is famous for manufacturing country, like for example, Samsung, Hyundai, LG, POSCO,
Mm,
sort of things. So
mm,
we are focusing on that manufacturing industry rather than hospitality and tourism industry because money
yes,
coming from there. So
yes,
comparing those jobs and in the hospitality and tourism jobs,
mm,
the salaries is a bit gaps over there.
yes, I
So,
agree.
like
Yep.
comparing your country, Australia, like a
Yeah,
Gold Coast, is a huge, very authentic oceans and beautiful scenery, aesthetic viewpoint.
yeah,
So it's quite good for your country and as a hospitality and tourism industry. However, comparing to your country, South Korea is a lack of that kind of inherited, you know, you know, uh, the scenery and viewpoint.
mm.
So what do you think about that? How can we approach about that gap?
Yeah, and you're right. Thank you for your question, Chumu. The challenge, I suppose, for us to think about is also that there's the geography issue
Mm,
of where Australia is located. We are in almost like a back pocket
mm,
geographically. We can't change that. And we know competing for tourism numbers, we're nowhere near this inbound foreign tourism compared to Korea, as you see on the screen. I think ours is only about 6.5 million, half the amount. And the reason being that it is expensive to travel far. And so our catchment is mainly the VFR market, friends and relatives market. That doesn't change, right? Before the pandemic, after the pandemic, they come and visit their families. We've got demand from New Zealand because it's near. Korea, on the other hand, is in a location where you've got that regional and Asia market, and they are growing. So they know what they're coming for, whether it be K-dramas, food, culture, scenery. They know what they're getting, and it's generally speaking, the low-cost carriers help in terms
mm,
of that volume on the numbers. I'm not saying that it's easy to reconfigure it. Having like an artificial beach or something, it's sometimes a bit of a challenge from a sustainability standpoint. But
mm,
I like your point about where does this industrial tourism landscape look like? We've been looking at examples around the world. I'll use the example of Vietnam, for example. A lot of the Samsung hubs are now in Vietnam.
mm.
And I was there and I actually saw the tour buses coming to visit the Samsung hubs.
Oh,
So we were there a few years ago and I thought, what's happening? These were tourists or
mm,
educational tourists visiting the Samsung hubs to learn
mm,
about the manufacturing that's taking place in the country.
mm,
And they were busloads. They were doing fun stuff like eating and culture and shopping and so on. But they were also part of this learning environment. So it's kind of a unique form of a business event,
mm,
the tourism and the business angle. And many of you might be interested to look up this word called Bleisure,
mm,
Bleisure, which
mm,
combines business and leisure
mm,
together. So I think there is still that angle for Korea to develop that high yield market, business tourism, looking at the manufacturing hub. The other one that I know Korea is quite big and probably even at the leading space is this area of medical tourism. The
mm,
sophistication of medical facilities in Korea is staggering, and they know it and they've got a competitive advantage. So the type of foreign tourists in Korea, I would argue, would be a high yield market. They come, they spend sometimes longer and they spend more. And that's not a bad thing. You
okay,
want a quality market.
okay.
So in Australia, for example, ours are quite different,
Mm,
and therefore we have different sets of challenges. So I hope that kind of, in a way, answers that question.
mm,
I am obviously looking at the different stats. This inbound numbers to Korea last year is generally quite healthy. Many other countries dream of getting past 10 million. Are not
okay.
nowhere close yet.
Thank you.
No worries. I just wanted to also get a bit of a snapshot. This is a stat as well of what the demand and numbers look like for Korea. And there's a whole range of, obviously, you could see at the bottom left hand of the screen, the regional influence, right? China, Japan, Taiwan, you got also Southeast Asia that comes through it. People know what they're going to get, and they can get there in a short span of time. Now, that's a key influence here. You got to know a bit about consumer psychology in terms of your careers. A lot of these countries, their holidays are quite short. They only have 7 days, 10 days of annual leave a year. So they will try and pack them and come out during the time of their national holiday week, Golden Week, for example. So they want to go to places where they can get the best value for their return on money and time, right? So they're going to places where the flight's 3 hours, 4 hours. They can come back on the last flight of the Sunday and go to work on the Monday. That's always been obviously a challenge for us. Our nearest country from Australia to New Zealand is still 2.5, 3 hours away. For us, where I am in Brisbane to get to Bali, it's 6 hours. And that for some, you can't change. So when you're looking at this, there are some opportunities as well. How can you, as a tourism professional, hospitality professional, maximize some of these benefits in terms of their time in the country? So I like the idea that if you look at the top right hand, the average length of stay for people in Korea, it's almost a week, and that's good, right? In Singapore, where I grew up, and even till now, the average stay is 3.4 days. It hasn't moved very much. Yes, they have had Taylor Swift over the last 2 weeks, and it's created a bit of a buzz in the country, but something like this stats is actually good, and you can build on some of the strengths within Korea, for example. I tend to stay in the industry. I know Prof. Koo has talked about, the salary is not the best. Most people don't get rich being in tourism hospitality. I think there are inherent benefits of an industry. And when I first joined, I always call it an industry of happiness. Very few jobs get to put smiles on people's faces. You go to Disney, you walk through the gates past the tickets, and the sign at the door says, "Welcome to the happiest place on earth." They want to promise that to people. And in your role, whether you are concierge, restaurant, tour operator, you've got a whole range of things to be able to create that level of happiness. And tourism is about well-being, right? Post-pandemic, the first day I picked up someone from the Brisbane airport, I saw a lot of people crying, people who have not seen each other for years. And being able to travel help them connect with families, loved ones, and other social relations. So it's also about co-creation. You as a professional and other people, they say what they like and prefer, and you shape that, right? Some people are into photography or bushwalking or food or music. And in Korea and anywhere else, you can personalize those outcomes. Every day is
Here's
different.
my questions.
Yes.
Like when you said this industry is a happiness industry, I know that. I agree with your point. But however, as a consumers, I can spend the money and then enjoy from the industry. However, the job, think about that. We are the export of tourism and export of hospitality. So these students are looking for the job in the field. That means we have to be a provider or a supplier for the consumers or travelers. That means
Yeah.
it's not a point of happiness. It's point of the making money. So what's your defense?
Yeah, and I agree that sometimes you want to be able to get the right person to be able to be behind it. And often when I look at the current model, in some cases, the internships, where some of you are students and going to work 1 day a week or part-time jobs, you're there to put money on the table, pay the rent, and so on. That's obviously the first reason why we need to exist. However, I think the internship model and, as you say, Chomu, putting people in the jobs, I think there is a way to better refine that, where you're putting people based on their personality for the best job out there. Not everyone will be comfortable wearing a suit that says Mickey Mouse.
Okay.
I probably can't do it. Someone else can, right? But
Right.
each of us have got skills. Some of us are a bit more analytical, some a bit more aesthetic, some a bit more numbers, some a bit more problem solvers, and we want to be able to have those jobs there. I acknowledge 70 to 80% of the industry is small businesses.
Okay.
And it's not a bad thing. You get to do everything.
Okay.
Then you develop your passion.
Okay.
Very few people, even myself, find our ultimate passion in our first job.
Okay.
Many of you will have 6 to 7 types of different jobs before you actually say, actually, that job was my favorite. And you'll go back to it. I in my slide as well, I talk about, you get paid to actually travel the world. Very few people sometimes get the opportunity to do so. And it's great, right? Because you learn a lot. I've been to several countries and some I haven't been to. And I always make an opportunity to try and go there and to partner with the communities, just learning from them. I remember one of my best memories of traveling is actually in Korea. I
Oh,
was on Jeju Island. I
okay.
was walking from the bus stop to one of the um, probably very, very edge of Jeju to see what you call the female divers who go diving.
Kenya.
Yeah, Hanya, that's right.
Okay.
And it was a bit of a walk. It was about 800, 900 meters. I was walking, I followed the directions on the map. Back then, there was no Google Maps or Naver or something.
Okay.
And then this, like a yogurt truck, stopped and gave me a lift to watch the people along the coast. And I was like, I don't know Korean. He doesn't even know me. I was a total stranger. And when I got off the truck, he gave me 2 bottles of yogurt so that I could have some yogurt as I went about a very hot day. But you meet the strangest and the weirdest people. I didn't even pay because I think he was just going the same way as I was going towards the edge of the island. But I appreciate it. I still remember it to this day. And for me, that kind of magic happens when you have that intercultural appreciation. For him, he's a truck driver, right? He's not a hospitality provider, but he saw that I was clearly walking with my big backpack. And he knew that I was going to this place because there's only one direction along that path. And he did what he could, just giving me a seat on his an empty seat on his truck. So I appreciate it. And to this day, I'm like, each time I go
Like
back to Korea,
he consider you poor travelers from outside, and
around the
he
world.
lost bus, and walking down the street with big packs. It's poor situation.
And you think back to this, and some of these people really go be over and beyond to try and be a hospitable host. And I think that's where you and I get to play that role on sometimes on a daily basis. While I don't necessarily work full time in hospitality, I am a host in my classroom. I am a host when I'm in the association. So I know that there are times where I am a guest, but this industry allows us to also play the different roles, host, guest, and sometimes the person in between, a translator or whatever. So, it's a interesting, and that kind of things money can't buy, money can't equate to it, because a good experience is something that you have with you for life. You remember them.
Good.
These are some of the things I put on the screen so you can have a bit of an idea. It's quite different now. In the past, you have the top left hand, right hand corner pictures, someone in the kitchen, a kitchen hand, executive chef, sous chef, someone on the right, a housekeeper, some people who call them housemates, and so on. I find it quite, I guess, feminist in terms of the content. It can be different now, and many of them have a different label for this kind of roles. The middle one is a pet hotel. Some of you have seen them. Dogs, cats, hamsters, birds. You can park them in the pet hotel. And in Brisbane, I know from friends who've dropped the pets off to go on holidays, the pet hotel costs more than your hotel and my hotel. It's interesting. And the pet hotel is small. Some of the pet hotels are like no bigger than like 5 shoe boxes. And yet, we're paying a lot for the pets to be there. But some of them are really good. Like the dog gets like a pedicure or manicure. They get a shampoo. They get walking around, and they get different types of things. And then on the bottom left-hand screen there, you start to also see, the robots come into play. Robot restaurants, robot check-in services, self-service technologies in the room, smart hotels, airlines now and airports with all these different technologies, drones. And also the new kind of culinary experiences, the food truck in the bottom right hand. It's a truck with food, and they can go anywhere, right? They don't have to pay what we call a monthly rent on a particular spot. They can be very mobile. And if they decide today they want to spell spaghetti or Italian food, they can. Tomorrow they can do curries. So you can start to see that it's become very personalized and very mobile. These days now in hotels, even in the Middle East, in Dubai, for example, you've got this butlers, the butlers who do everything, who from check-in to concierge to room service to booking of your restaurants, movie tickets, and so on. And they're very professional staff. I've met a couple who were very young and very able and knew almost the hotel head to toe. And they were people who would be servicing some of the influencers, some of the celebrities and investors as well. So it's changing. It's giving a very professional look in terms of how hospitality and tourism careers should be and should be like moving into the future. And the list goes on. These names don't normally appear 10 years ago. Now you can see all of these, one way or another, is linked or has some affiliation to the tourism and hospitality industry. Cruises, airline, theme parks, wedding planners, sport events, zoo, aquariums, tour operators, wine, health and wellness, which is a big one, right? Food, sauna, spa treatments. The logistics, I have had students who were accounting students, finance students, and they're like, tourism hospitality is not for me. I said, really? And I said, you watch. At the end of his degree, he graduated with accounting degrees. I saw him about 6 months ago, and I said, what do you do now? He said, I'm an accountant, but I'm an accountant in a hotel. And I said, that's tourism, right? And he laughed. And so you can see that the industry needs everyone from the marketers, human resource, finance, security, marketing. There is a role for everybody. It's an industry. And so many of you who are looking at your TikTok or any other type of social media, that's now a big growing aspect because the industry is saying there is so many influencers in the world, there is so much content. Now, how do I get involved? And many of them probably are not so familiar with social media. And you, in your generation, many of you maybe were born with a social media account in your pocket when you were born. You know what it's like, and you might be able to advise them. I met with a Japanese friend of mine for lunch last Saturday. He took students to Australia. Their project is working with a resort on social media and how to attract the Japanese market. And these students are like yourself, first year, second year, third year students. And they learn English. They advise them on what the young Japanese market is like in terms of tourism. And they develop campaigns on TikTok or on other platforms like Instagram, how to attract the Japanese tourists into the resort from Japan, and they create for them a web page from English translated to Japanese. And I thought it's great because in industry, that's the kind of things that's needed now from careers and the diversity of things. We now have direct flights from Japan, China, and Korea, for example, into Australia. And we still see some jobs, and I note that they call for people who can speak like the second or third language because they know they've got a market for it. So I want to encourage and challenge some of you to think about, some of your passions. Yes, the degree is important. It is one part of professional development, but some of your other skill sets, maybe some of you are very good with content creation on social media. Some of you are very good with digital design, putting together infographics and posters or videos for some of the industry professionals. And I think that can be a very good asset even as you go through your time at university. Uh, Traditionally, right, the career progression, and this example is from an article looking at the business events, and it's in a similar fashion. We can think of a hotel, a restaurant, an airline. It's not terribly different in terms of moving up the career because some of you are like, okay, if I start in the industry in 3 years' time or in 2 years' time, what's my career looking like after 10 years, after 15 years, after 30 years? And I believe that this shouldn't be a linear thing where I am hoping and working with industry that your careers can also be mobilized in a different company. Right? So you start maybe in hotel A. It doesn't mean you have to stay in the hotel industry. What if you move to airline B? Can you move up the career like that? And then after that, you want to run the business events, C. And so this kind of movement is also quite interesting because in the past, like what Prof. Koo was saying, you progress. It was very common for people to stay in the same company because the job is secure, you know the culture, you get paid after a few years, you apply for promotion, you get there, you get more money, and you could retire quite comfortably as a CEO of a business. I don't know if that same progression is as relevant as for your generation and the next generation now, because many of you will say, well, I want to change. I don't want the job to be boring. I want some flexibility, some change. So you can see in this diagram, there's this social element. Many people want to have that sense of belonging, some kind of a identity, some kind of interest. How does the job grow me in my personal interest as well? It's not just a job, right? To get paid 9 to 5 and so on. You want to be able to express some of your own values, the rights of women, the rights of young children, the rights of different communities. You want to be able to learn new skills, meet new people, go global. And those things need to be, in my terms, transferable, whether you're in Korea and elsewhere. And increasingly now, some of these businesses, the global businesses, are offering opportunities for you to do things like what we call a job swap. So someone in New York and someone in Seoul want to actually change jobs for 6 months or 1 year within the same company. So he or she could be in New York in the marketing angle of, say, Korean Airlines. You are in a human resource in Korea. And there are now opportunities for some of these companies to swap jobs for 6 months, stay in a different country, enrich your global horizons, then come back. And I think that's a great thing. I think industries and businesses who think that way give the opportunity for employees to stay longer in the business because they can see that there's job variety, it's fun. And of course, some people may not want it, they just want to stay in their own zone, and that's fine. But there's now a growing interest to be able to do that. Many of you may read about in the post-pandemic, there's this trend called quiet quitting. People are just leaving their jobs, fed up with the systems and just quitting. But businesses that get it right value each of you on the screen and those watching the video as individuals with different needs, that there is no one size fits all career. And I think we can do better. Some women in particular, in the past, when they get pregnant or want to have a family, the career almost like stops. But now the businesses that can fit them in and able to arrange the work in a way that you know gives them that kind of leeway to be able to take time off work, if men included, if you want to go and like help a community in a very poor country, you can go and come back, and it does make some of these jobs a bit more, I guess, enriching, and also allow it to happen. I was last year calling up a low cost carrier, a budget airline, and then this woman on the phone picked up and was just trying to get some arrangements sorted out with a booking. And then halfway through the call, I could hear a baby crying in the background. And I thought, no, that's unusual because normally in a call center, it's adult only environment. So I said, if you don't mind me asking, are you working from home? And she said, yes, I can work from home. My job allows me to. I said, that's good. And I said, at least the company allows her to be both her primary caregiving responsibilities, but also being able to take on the job in her own comfortable zone. And that's the kind of thing that we want to see in terms of career progression and job kind of redesign to be able to factor that in as well.
Aaron,
Yes, go for it.
the back to slide.
Yeah.
I think because your personality and character is so, warm for foreign people or unknown people. That's why. Anyway, here, look at this, entering.
Mm,
Our student here, they are line. Actually, this department is so unique and famous department in the Kyung Hee University.
mm,
And they have been trying very hard in the high school, middle school days and the competition, and then finally touchdown to our department. They line up
mm.
here.
Yes.
But and the first day of this semester, I brought you to this class, and you are talking about this slide for themselves. this is a great, you have to sense of responsibility for their career path. This is the first time because they are standing this point, and then they will apply to their goal of their life. I don't know,
Yeah.
they go assistant director, deputy manager, and project manager or CEO. It's a quite a linear progression. But however,
Correct.
as you mentioned, this world is not the linear anymore. It's it's a networking world, and so flexible, agile, and many chances we can move around and changing alternative job options in Korea, out of Korea, and Australia, whatever. So
Yeah.
we never know, even though they got into the hospitality and tourism department, probably they go with the space, Mars, and Africa and America and South America, wherever, 10 years later, 20 years later, sort of things, I guess. Because I entered the literature of English and then moved to the management for job opportunity when the internet comes. And now
Yeah.
finally come to the hospitality and tourism professor. It's so changeable.
It is. And thank you for that. It kind of reminded me that this work was done like even before the pandemic. After the pandemic, some people, as they go up the ladder, they're like, is this what I want? And they realize that there may be other things in life that cause them to do other things. So some of them, like, assistant to director and so on, they actually like don't get promoted in the system. They actually quit. And some of them I know now run things like farms, and they run homestay, and they've got the skills to do it well. So they want to go and live in nature and still have that engagement in the tourism hospitality setting. They know what it is like to cook a good meal on a farm. They know what it's like to give a good homestay experience. So you don't have to be limited by what is a very obviously linear progression. Many of you, as I'll talk a bit later about entrepreneurship and innovation, some of you will leave and create your own things. So I have students who, after a few years in industry, decided that they will leave and start some of their fashion labels. Others decided that they will go and work and become a surf instructor. There's a whole range of things that's obviously depending on your interest area.
Right.
Yeah. So
But
go ahead.
the major is doesn't mean only for job opportunity. Major, you just happen to be choose this major, but you have a chance to meet your good friends when you are young, and the friendship is going to forever and stay together forever. It's gonna be very important, when when you're living your life. So it's not the matter of the job or career path, but matter of
Yeah.
lifetime, friendship. You join
Yeah.
this program.
Yeah, and I think I do appreciate that the students like who I have on the screen and who read this see this video, all of you have made the decision to go and do a degree or this course at this point in time. And for many of my students, we are in the second week of my semester as well. Some of my students, also like yourself, are wondering, what do I want to do with my life? And they're still thinking. I like to tell this story, and to all of you, my oldest student is 77 years old. 77.
7 years
A-
old.
And she was a nurse, and then decided to do tourism and events as a major because she wanted to work in the hospital to be a health promotion event staff. And she was a great student. She has so many stories that my students who were much younger learn from her. Yes, her computer skills were a bit slower, but for me, it's fine. If she's got the interest to learn, like yourselves, the career is what you make out of it. We're here, Prof. Koo and myself and many others are here to just provide you with what's available out there. And I think maybe as an opportunity, and some of you as well, go and attend some of these job fairs, job expos, see what's on offer, see what people are wanting. You may not be applying for the job tomorrow, but at least you know and you've made the network and connection of what jobs are available. And I think that's one of the things I've got my students to do. I take them later in the semester. I think in May we have annual, each year we have a job fair for just for tourism and hospitality. Even though they are first year students, I said let's go together, make it a bit of a fun field day, Just look at the events and look at the jobs on offer. And many of them start to say, I didn't know that's a job. And some of them, learn more about it, read more about it, and develop their own passion about it. So yeah, it's never too late to actually think about some of these things. So yeah, I think it's an ongoing one. I'm still learning as well. Um, Taking the management or the business side as well, I also asked these businesses, right? I said, okay, the employees like yourselves are looking for jobs, but what exactly are they also looking for? Or I asked my alumni, people who are my students, where they have finished studying and they're now in the industry, and I said, what would you say to be key characteristics that would give you a kind of a successful long-term career? This is not so much like doing well in your exams and passing your courses and graduating. These things that I put on the screen is compiled by a range of not just literature that tells us that, but people who are now in industry for 10, 20, 30 years and saying, here are these skills that you want to be able to develop even before or during university and after university that sets you up for success. And it's in any industry, not just tourism, hospitality, events. You got to be resilient. The industry goes through the hard knocks. We've seen that in things like COVID and the war and many other issues that affect the industry. People get up and get on with life. And that's resilience for me. I remember when we had some of the massive floods that were through the summer cyclones and heavy rain. I looked out at the industry, and many of them were literally, managers included, flushing out the flood water from the restaurant so that they can try and get the restaurant ready for dinner that very same day. And at lunchtime, they were trying to flush out about 1.5 meters of flood water from the restaurant, and they did it to the point where the next day they could serve breakfast. And for me, that is resilience. I mean, most people will be like, just wait for the water to get out. But they said, no, we will do it and we will be able to get the restaurant up and running. So, you want to be able to problem solve. What happens if you run out of eggs, right? In a restaurant, and sometimes you got this like a bird flu or pandemics. The problem solving might be very simple. You pick up the phone and you ask other hotels, other restaurants, will you sell me eggs because I'm out of eggs at my restaurant? And others might help you. It's a lot of teamwork. Yes, people compete, hotels versus hotels, restaurants versus restaurants, airlines against airlines, but they work as a team. It is one brand, it is one industry, and people want to be as open and communicating with one another. So I have on my database about 57 businesses that I know I can rely on and call on if I need something. So for example, if I need to put up a video on a particular topic, right? And they're the best people. Why do I need to recreate the video? I'll ask them and say, look, I know you've done this area of things like animals in tourism. Can you share with me just a short 10-minute video of what you already have? And many people will be able to help, and you reciprocate, right? You give back. If they ask you, can you come and do a workshop for my staff on hygiene or about Southeast Asia tourism markets, and I go in where I can outside of my teaching commitments, I'll go back and I'll help that. There's also critical thinking, how you think about issues. Not everything that you see that's working is the best, right? There's always areas of improvement. What if I change this setting? One of the areas that I get the staff and the students to think about is this thing called food waste, right? Which is a big area. When people go into buffets and they eat a lot and then there's so much food left over. And I say to the students, what if we think harder at how we might reduce food waste? And one of the students in my classes a few years ago said, Aaron, why don't we give them like smaller spoons? And I thought, oh, that's quite an interesting concept, right? Rather than give them big soup spoons that they take a lot and waste, what if we give them smaller spoons so they don't take so much onto their plate? And it kind of worked. It reduced food waste by about 7% on site. And then others might think, like what if we just change some behavior? Many hotels wash laundry in the day, and daytime the energy bills are higher. So one of the hotel staff actually provided a great suggestion. What if we wash our laundry in the basement at 3 a.m. in the morning? And I thought about this. Yes, the energy bills are lower then. You still get your linen in time for check-in and check-out. And it worked. It reduced the hotel's energy bills by about 30%. just by washing laundry at a different time of day. So you want people to be able to push them, and you reward them, right? You reward them in different ways. Now, not all of you will be rewarded if I say the reward is ice cream. Some people don't like ice cream, right? And you say, what rewards your staff? Maybe it's a holiday, maybe it's time off, maybe it's going to the movies, tickets to a particular sport, right? Maybe just a day off to celebrate with the family. Different people are motivated differently, and we need to be able to have a reward mechanism that celebrates all this diversity as well. And many of you will be onto leadership if the opportunity arises. I'm not sure, Chumo, in your faculty or in your department, do you have like student associations or student clubs?
I'm asking the here the chair or representation of the students. I'm asking
Yeah,
her to organize the student union for this department and
sure.
balancely the Korean student and a foreign student and the woman and man and voluntarily join together making the student union for this department, not the hospitality of tourism college. This new
Right.
department and new program, is need that kind of a student union to
Yeah,
increase this quality of this program. So
yeah.
so I stress the importance of the your active participation from the students, and the student must do that kind of work, doing yourself for this department with the leaders.
Mm.
It's
Yeah,
important.
it's a great opportunity. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I think many of you who put your hand up and said, I want to give a opportunity to lead certain things. It might be simple things, right? Organizing a movie night, a pizza night, leading people on a field trip, becoming almost like a guide for new students when they come from overseas to Kyung Hee and to Korea. Those kinds of leadership positions are valuable because when you go for your interview in the future, yes, they will, have a look at where you graduated, your field of study, but they'll ask you, now, outside of your studies, what did you do at uni? Right? What was fun? What are you passionate about? And the students who get involved in like clubs and societies and positions of leadership, they share a lot, and you can see there is that confidence, there is that motivation to work together in teams, and it's great because that is a precursor. When you go to the industry, it's very rarely that you work by yourself all the time. There will be instances where you need that teamwork, and if people can see you work with cross cultures, you've been in leadership positions in relevant fields, they celebrate that as a good kind of a link and association that you are the best person for that particular role. So I want to encourage you to think about some of these things, especially as you have the 3 or 4 years at university to do that as well. What I wanted to do is also, I'll play this video, and it actually is a short video on how some of you may chart your own individual path when you go on your own to decide that I want to grow my business and become an entrepreneur. So this short video actually just says a little bit about some of those risks that people take, some of the resilience, some of the problem solving that they do, and your friends at the university or the classes could very well be your business partners moving forward. So this is a short video on how to be a successful tourism entrepreneur.
You decide on taking the entrepreneurship route. Skills should be present for successful entrepreneurship. Identifying your own strengths and shortcomings is crucial for the effective functioning of the business. Tourism entrepreneurs are classified as growth entrepreneurs because they concentrate more on their quality of life while living in their desired destination. You need to have the necessary skills and knowledge. First and foremost, you need to know how to introduce new products to clients. Second, create a plan for dealing with competition and make your business more effective. Thirdly, have a knowledge of your available resources and finances. Fourthly, you must have strong people skills in order to communicate and motivate. To be a successful travel and tourism entrepreneur, you need to have the necessary skills and knowledge. Our online
So this is obviously an ad, but it's a very nice way to put, an introduction into tourism entrepreneurship. There are programs on TV like called Shark Tank, where people take their ideas and I call it the elevator pitch, right? You take 30 seconds, go up the elevator with someone. You need to be able to sell the idea to them in about 30 seconds or less. And through your course and through your studies and your experiences, you might be able to come up with some business idea, something that has never happened before. And you go to industry and they'll be like, that's a great idea. So in one of our courses at university is a technology and innovation course. And we always challenge the students and say, look, the idea is not necessarily out there in industry yet. It doesn't mean it won't exist. You have the opportunity, and here you have the breakthrough available to test it and go about doing it. So a couple of the students in a course, this is even before COVID, developed this thing called the paperless payment square. You probably have different versions of it, where you put your phone or your credit card on it, it beeps, and then you get money to the person making the sale. And that was a project that the students involved, and now they're quite successful entrepreneurs. They go around the country, they sell that square, they've got the IP for it. And so you start to be able to think of ways, where your business ideas become products or services. And that's a very different kind of a tourism career, but it's still interesting, right? Because you get to do things that no one else has done. You get to be your own business, set your own daily agenda, look at how your business grows. And, if you really get tired out of it, or 10 to 15 years, for example, you can always sell the business and go on and do other things. So yeah, I think it's an area now where more and more of you in this current millennials and the younger generation may be thinking to say, what my daily engagement is, this kind of a YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok generation are doing in terms of entrepreneurship on those platforms as well. So, there are lots of influencers, there's thousands of them, but what kind of business ideas will stick to the industry and move forward?
Travel and
Okay. So probably one of my last couple of slides is a lot more reading on the kind of trends that's happening. I think it's useful from a careers perspective. The two documents here from Deloitte and from Accor, which is essentially a market research company and a hotel company, telling us a little bit about consumer behavior in the future. And that might spark some ideas around careers. No longer are they just sitting there and providing hotels. The second one in particular, the Accor report, shows also that there's this increase in number of people who do what we call remote work or digital nomads. They can work from anywhere in the world as long as they've got internet access. And that, could be like a interior designer, a lawyer, a financial planner. They could be anywhere in the world. And I think there's new visas now that are giving people the right to stay in a country for 6 months or 1 year, just so that they can experience and live in those places. It might be cheaper as well. But that means for Accor, they need to reconfigure what the hotel looks like, right? No longer are you just providing rooms on floors. They may be now reshaping or rethinking what the design of hotels looks like. And for many of you interested in design and architecture, the co-working spaces. So it's almost like a hostel now, where you have people in their rooms, but they come out, and the shared kitchen or shared working spaces and leisure spaces is changing the way the hotels will look into the future. And that's quite interesting, because then you've got new kinds of areas where some of you will be thinking, like, what if you run certain times on the weekends where you have like a wellness workshop for some of these professionals? Then you've got careers in wellness. So I think that's, yeah, go for it.
I know the end.
Right.
Okay, we have just 5 minutes left. Why don't you
Yeah.
take a few questions from students? They might have an
Sure.
interesting question for you or other stuff.
Sure,
Please
no worries.
feel free to ask it.
I want to ask.
Go ahead.
Importantly, in Korea, aging society is a serious problem today. How can we lead sustainable tourism management in this society?
Good.
Thank you for that. And I would approach that in a few ways. One, from the workforce perspective, many are now re-entering the workforce, and the businesses are saying, look, this is a big pool of talent that we can't ignore and say, here's your retirement, goodbye. They're now reintroducing them back into society as mentors or as part-time or short-term staff, because they still have the skills, and those who want to work should be able to give an opportunity to work. The other angle is also that the tourists themselves are also aging. And increasingly now, many countries are catering to this kind of aging, senior, wellness, grey tourism by having itineraries that cater to their needs. For example, you might be going to a country and it's not like a Kontiki crash course of 9 days in 4 countries. It's a slower pace. They do a bit of a sauna, origami, dance, food, a bit of a culture, and it's very slow pace because they actually cater to their needs. One of the areas that I am interested in, some of you might be thinking about, is people who are aging but also have certain kind of health requirements. How do we also support them, right? Because they may have accessibility needs, wheelchairs, guide dogs. How does the industry actually ramp up to become more accessible for some of these operators? I went to a restaurant a few years ago in Japan. This restaurant staff members are people with kind of Alzheimer's disease and also memory loss. And they will forget. You order a burger, you get sushi.
Okay.
And it's interesting because all the staff members are like that, but they are there and they have now given them from the local council a restaurant to work in. It's called the Restaurant of Mistakes. But people enjoy it, and every day, as I understand, there's still a queue to go and eat at this restaurant.
Okay, let's take one more question from students. Okay, Aaron, what is your thought and opinion for your first freshman, and what's your feedback or the advice and comment on that life?
So I think first and foremost, I just want to thank you for considering tourism hospitality as one of your chosen professions and interests. I was like you many, many years ago. I enjoyed traveling, and that's why I wanted to remain somehow in the tourism industry sector. I admit that not everyone in my graduation cohort remained in tourism and hospitality, but for me and those few who have remained, it was our choice. All right, none of us are like millionaires, but each day we get to work with people like you and the industry, and that for me is my passion. I get out of bed because I know it is an industry of happiness, and I want you to, yes, the going is hard. It's been a very, very difficult few years, but I want to be able to say that for many of you, it's a fun industry. No 2 days are the same. It's not never been monotonous. It's hard work, yes, but many of you will become lifelong friends. So my advice to you is some of your friends in class will become your best friends in your profession and in your career. Maybe you'll be business partners or colleagues hiring one another as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Aaron Tham. As a first lecture and first lecture for you from outside, it's gonna be huge chance for you to consider yourself in front of your life. Okay, Aaron, once again, thank you very much. You're a great lecture for our students. I look forward to see you soon in Kyung Hee University. I will let you visiting to our students. Okay, we might be a chance to again see you.
Yes, 감사합니다.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
And student, thank you very much. Pay attention to lecture, and I look forward to see you next week, Tuesday. Okay, bye.